This episode is brought to you by Roundtable Group, the experts on experts. We've been connecting attorneys with experts for over 25 years. Find out more at roundtablegroup.com.
Welcome to Discussions at the Roundtable. I'm your host, Noah Ballmer, and today I'm excited to welcome Dan Arthur, President and Chief Engineer of ALL Consulting, an energy consulting firm with diverse specialties ranging from water management cycle to litigation support. Mr. Arthur is a registered engineer in 35 states and holds numerous certifications. Additionally, he's a published author and a sought-after expert witness for a wide range of engineering and other matters. Mr. Arthur holds a BS in petroleum engineering from Missouri University of Science and Technology. Mr. Arthur, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Noah.
All right, Dan, let's jump into it. You founded ALL Consulting almost 25 years ago. Tell me about your company.
Well, I've had a diverse background before that, and I really liked having a multidisciplinary company, doing a lot of different things. I'm a petroleum engineer working in that industry. I've seen the ups and downs. So I kind of like diversity as security. So that's what I did with ALL. So we do a lot of different things, and that holds my interest and just keeps me going every day.
Sure. Was engineering always a passion of yours?
I grew up on a dairy farm, and I decided that wasn't the future for me. And I have an uncle who went to work for Amoco in 1974 as a petroleum engineer, and I thought that was a neat path.
Interesting. So he first got you into it. ALL, you were talking about diversity. It is a very diverse consulting practice with a wide range of specialties. How do you and your team members stay current with all of this? In other words, what does it mean not only to be an expert in your field, but to remain one?
I'll tell you. So the part of the thing that I've learned and really done over the years is I've tried to push myself and the firm to be kind of that tip of the spear sort of thing. So we're not your commodity guys that you go to. So we push all the different points of the different things that are going on, and it really allows us to do some great things, to have some great learning experience, is to get to know some really wonderful people.
Sure.
And some of the projects that we've done are just, I could name them and you would know. So
Wow. Do you do any continuing education? Do you just stay read? How do you remain kind of current in such a broad field?
So I do a lot of continuing education. I go to conferences, but I also do a lot of webinars and online courses, and so like just for me this year, I've probably done maybe 30 or 40 webinars to other people that help me have credit for some of that stuff, and like I'm doing one in the middle of August on ethics in orphan well plugging. So if you look at a lot of the stuff going on around the country and the IIJA and BIL, where the federal government is putting billions of dollars out there to plug orphan and idle wells. So
wow. How did that first lead? How did ALL first lead to your first expert witness engagement, or had you already been doing that before you even founded the company?
Let me tell you about my first expert experience.
All right, tell us a story.
And it wasn't, so I'm gonna, kind of duck my head and put my hand in front of my eyes and go, yeah, that was me. But so I went to work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the 80s. And I got to do some neat things, but the first case that I did, I got pulled in the second week of my employment with EPA, and I was the only petroleum engineer there. And so they thought, well, you'll be able to handle this. And on the other side of the table, there were two experienced petroleum engineers, each having, 30 years of experience. And they're talking about all this stuff, which I understood because I worked there. But then they started talking about acronyms and all these things that I didn't even know what they were. And so I couldn't even respond. And so you can imagine the other counsel just tore me up because I didn't even know what they were talking about. And let's just say we didn't do so good there. But so I learned a lot of lessons and went through like the very next right after that, and got the acronym book from EPA and started, and I just became an avid reader. Even today I read 2 or 3 books a week.
Oh,
But I'll tell you that experience got me to support, still while I was at EPA, the first criminal indictment under the Safe Drinking Water Act amendments, where we were able to put an individual in jail for about 3 months for fraud.
wow.
So it turned around for me. But boy, I had to fall to learn, and there's a book that I've read that and if I get too off track, just stop me. But
No, no,
that
go
is
on.
just
This is great.
a really good one. It's called Falling Upward. It was written by a Catholic priest, Richard Rohr, and the point that he makes is you have to fail to learn. So and that very first time I I didn't have mentors. I didn't have people telling me, just what to do. I've had to learn this kind of grassroots by myself. So, yep, failure creates learning.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. This is something that newer experts are all going to face, their very first case, right? And part of the discussion has to be, what can attorneys do to better prepare a new expert witness? So an attorney has to know, right, that their expert that they're bringing on hasn't done this before. That must be one of their first questions. And so you would think that they would have, it's partly incumbent upon them to prepare the expert and let them know what to expect.
So I'll say this is in my firm, I do the majority of being an expert, and I have over the years, but I've gotten other individuals in the firm to work as experts and so forth. And what I'll do in those situations is mentor them. So I may be on the phone with them during their first calls. I'll talk to the attorney, hey, he's not done this before. But I recall, one time one of our guys we were getting ready to testify at a hearing in New Mexico, and he was just really nervous because he didn't have my background, and he'd never done this before. And part of what I had to do was to remind him what he had done, what he could say, when he's getting certified as an expert on the stand. Okay, you don't have all these letters behind your name, but you've done 1,000 of these and this and all this area, and you know what you're doing. So have some confidence. And the other thing that I've done is I'll get the guys, before they say testify or something, to go watch another expert testify. And that can be really helpful, and watch the, what the attorneys do and the kind of questions they ask. And, I've done enough times. I understand when the opposing counsel asks me, when did I stop beating my wife?
Right, exactly. Let's talk about them badgering you on the stand in that manner. Do you have any techniques that you like to employ to kind of keep your cool? How do you prepare for, being impeached as a witness? How do you prepare for the amount of oppositional research that attorneys can sometimes do onto the opposing side's expert witnesses?
I'll tell you, from my experience, I talk to the attorneys that that are on my side, and will ask them a lot of questions on what things that they think and so forth. I'll open up things that I think that might get brought up, and talk to those with my legal team. But in the big picture, you have to be ready. And I and there's things that you could do in there to throw attorneys off. I'm going to give you 2 examples of some testimony that I've done that was just, pretty humorous and really helped me. But you have to really look at these opportunities. So this was probably 10 years ago, or maybe more, I was testifying, and this was on some things dealing with hydraulic fracturing, when the fracking boom was going on, and I was one of the experts in that whole arena. And one of the attorneys from an environmental group was trying to show how bad this stuff was and all that. And he said, Mr. Arthur, are you aware that in fracking they use saffricants? And I went, saffricants? I don't think I'm familiar with that. And he's, you're not familiar with saffricants? You know, you're supposed to be the expert and you don't know what a saffricant is? And then I saw his technical person, you know, kind of lean over and whisper in his ear. And while he's doing that, I was taking a cup of coffee and there's this whole hearing board there. And he says, oh, I mean, surfactants.
Surfactants.
And I about, you know, spit out coffee out of my mouth and started laughing. And so the entire hearing panel started laughing too. And he got frustrated and he's like, no more questions. So,
oh, that's great.
I had another one. So it really helps, you know, that, and I'll just encourage any expert listening to this to stay in your wheelhouse. And that's where you're going to do well. I was getting questioned another time on a similar thing. And one of the attorneys used this document prepared by the National Petroleum Council as an example that he was trying to show that my testimony didn't align with this newly published document by the petroleum industry that, you know, that said all this stuff. And a lot of times what I found is people use things, but they don't read them. You know, they don't know. People are lazy, I think, a lot of times. And so I try to read everything. But anyway, so he's going through this and saying, well, Mr. Arthur, this document recently published by the National Petroleum Council says exact opposite of what you said. And I said, counselor, can you look at the bottom, you know, of that page that you have there and look at the reference and tell me what it says? And he says, prepared by Dan Arthur. And I said,
oh, that's exceptional.
so, you know, we all have good stories, but, you know, it just, you know, when you're testifying, if you could stay on those things that you were really good at, and that also means when, you know, when somebody like Roundtable gives me a call, if they're looking for somebody that's just not really my, you know, my thing, I just tell you guys, you know, I could maybe help here, but, you know, that's not my biggest strength.
Well, let's talk about vetting calls. Do you turn down a significant number of opportunities?
Probably about half.
Oh, no kidding, that many.
Yeah.
Is it typically just a matter of you don't have the proper expertise, or is it timing, money? Is it ever ethics? Is it ever somebody trying to get you to say something that you don't believe?
So it's a combination, I would say, of all those things.
Sure.
So, you know, I look for attorneys that are, you know, I look at the attorneys that know the legal stuff so they can really help me, but I know the technical stuff so I can help them. So it's kind of
Sure.
this team effort. And I had one attorney call me, and, you know, we were going through the interview process, and he says, well, we've got this thing that we want to say, and this, you know, this is our message. And I said, well, I can't, you know, it doesn't work that way. You know, it's like, I can do all the evaluations, see what I come up with. And he's like, Dan, you do this all the time. And I said, no, you know, I will figure stuff out, but, you know, I work for plaintiffs, defendants, state government, federal government, private entities and all that, because I'm going to come out with one opinion. You know, I don't care which side, you know. And obviously that one I did not do, but sometimes, and I would say most of the time, it's just somebody wants something on a particular thing that I know stuff about, but not, you know, not the details of that to be able to do that. And that comes, I think, a little bit from experience, that I know how it goes down the road, and you don't want to get into something that, you know, that you're going to have this certain experience or be able to be questioned on. It's like, so have you ever done this before? Well, no, but I read about it. You know, now.
Right. Well, along those lines, have you been, midway through an engagement and, when you vetted the call to begin with, everything seemed fine. This is right in your wheelhouse, but then it kind of makes a little bit of a left turn and you've had to do some research on the fly. Is that something that comes up?
Certainly I would say that in just about every case, there's things that where the case, shifts multiple different directions and and I'm having to do more research and read documents and, get up to speed on a lot of different details. But I've not had one where, I got partway through and had to say, I have to back away.
Gotcha. So have you ever had to walk out of a case for any other reason?
No.
Never. Well, that's good. I do like to ask about ethics. When you're given when you have to write a report, are you typically given a skeletal outline or are you writing it full cloth?
So I have my own format that I use
Okay.
because I've had multiple Daubert challenges, and I've never failed any of those challenges. But so I'm pretty picky on just how I do my report and showing the methodology and all the all the things and having it also footnoted and referenced to death. Because
Sure.
I will tell you that even along those lines, there's been times where, I'm doing this and I get something that I didn't reference and I get questioned, well, where did you get this? And I'm like, oh, I can't remember if it was here or there or whatever. And so you know, I drive people crazy because I want, all the statements referenced so that I can do that. But so I use that, and I've really, when the legal teams that I've worked with can see that I've been Daubert challenged and have that, they've been very good at letting me proceed in that fashion.
Have you ever had, speaking of reports, have you ever had an attorney kind of try and influence the way that you write a report to kind of not necessarily make you say something that you wouldn't say, but change the way that you would say it to kind of improve their case?
I would say that I've had attorneys, offer a lot of edits and so forth, and have things that they would pull out to say, really, we've got another expert that's going to be handling this part, so
Okay.
don't talk about that. But I haven't. I would say that I've had attorneys that have tried to push in different directions, and I'm like, you're the legal guy, I'm the expert, this is where that is. I don't, it may not get you as much money as you want or may whatever, but a lot of these cases, for the most part, they need experts because they can be really complicated.
It seems like you have to be a little bit proactive. Is that your experience, that you do have to occasionally question attorneys and not just, do everything that they say the way they say it and when they say it?
Oh, I absolutely. I don't like just what you said about I mean, I look at it that it's a team effort. And if it's, them trying to, just tell me what to do all over the place, and we would have a timeout discussion.
And does that happen with any frequency?
Not really. I mean, I I can't even remember the last time that has happened. I've
Okay.
had several discussions on my reports as do we include this, do we not include it,
Sure.
those kind of things. But you know, I've worked with some really great law firms and so forth, and there's but I've also done as an expert, we don't always think about this, but I've done consulting to judges that are getting ready
Hmm.
to handle a case and they really don't know that and they want to get up to speed. I've
Oh,
done
interesting.
to the National Judicial College where they're trying to learn about, particular things. And, so I think that's one of the things I like a lot about being an expert is I like learning. But I like, helping that legal team, the more they understand it, the better they're going to be able to do, to help the side that I'm on win. Because there's times where people will ask me, to be an expert, and I listen to it and I'm going, this is really, you're not going to like you know, how I would be your expert, because I would probably go against you.
Do you find yourself on the opposite side of experts that you know?
Oh, all the time. So I'll say that one thing that I noticed, I don't know if you guys notice this at Roundtable, you probably get to see a lot more experts than I do, but especially through COVID, a lot of the experts are not 25-year-olds, you know what I mean? A lot of them are more senior guys, but during COVID, a lot of experts just said to heck with it and retired, And so at least in the kind of the arena that I tend to play in, where I testify a lot, that those number of people have shrunk. So people that I used to either, work with or against, a lot of them have retired or are retiring. But I've got other experts out there that I've both worked on with cases and worked against as opposing experts. So
how do those relationships affect your performance during a case, or do they not?
I don't think they do, but I'm a pretty confident guy. So like when I do take on a case, I'm pretty confident that I can do good. And sometimes what I see is there are other experts out there that will take on an expert job that really aren't, the cat's meow for that thing. I like that, by the way. So, because that allows me to do better.
Sure. Do you use what you know about these other experts who are in your field to help your side of the case win? In other words, do you provide the attorney, or do you change the way that you might write your report or speak during a deposition? Do you talk about the other side?
I would say we all do that. So if I'm meeting, say, an expert that I know, and we're talking about a case, and I can say, well, I know he did, he's done this in these other cases, and he doesn't really know this stuff, so I don't know why he's here, or this guy's a badass, and we really need to, have our act together.
Sure. You had mentioned winning. Before we wrap up, that's a question I like to ask every guest. Is winning important to you, and do you continue to track the case once your part of it's finished?
I would say that it is important to me. I have not been on the winning side in every instance that I've been involved in. Some of those things you can't control, and some of the cases have been, multi-billion-dollar cases where you're testifying on one part of it, and you just don't know all the other complexities. But I'd say that I like winning, because that has other attorneys that then want to use me again. But at the same time, even if I'm on a case where we lose, I want to be the one where they say, well, Dan kicked some butt, but
Dan got us the best result we could have got.
There's a lot of times it's not even about winning or losing. It might be, I did one case in county court, and the attorneys were, it was the first time that the attorney was so excited about my testimony, came out afterwards and gave me a big hug, and and all this. And it was one of those where they didn't necessarily win, they didn't necessarily lose, because it was a jury trial, and they, it kind of split, but the side I was on got more, so they took that as a win. But it was it's just a lot of complications, and they had some other experts, not technical experts, but um, guys that were like project managers for them that were also testifying that kind of did not do so good. So sometimes you're fighting battles that you can't control because the other
Sure.
people that are involved. So you can't just say I want to win. You want to do the best you can. And yeah, we all want to win, but sometimes it's not up to you.
Does that affect the calculus as to whether or not you accept a engagement? If it's winnable, or you feel that your side is, potentially the winning side?
No, I would look at it more like how I would, I try to run life and everything with all my cards face up. That's what I tell people. It's like, I don't have enough time in life to not tell the truth, or so I kind of, like, I made the basics for our consulting company based on this book called The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's, be impeccable with your word, don't take things personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best. And so
Okay.
if you can do those things, you're pretty good. And so I will tell an attorney, even in an interview, to say, look, I don't think I can help you, because you're not going to like how this is going to come out. And I did one case that was also in county court, that I was very upfront with the attorneys, about what happened, and it was a landowner versus an insurance company, and you know you know I would say that there was good points on both sides, but the landowner had some really not good things, and I told them about that, and they still wanted to go to court, and I got up
Mhm.
there in court, told them exactly what I did, before, and they lost. So
But you did your part the best you could.
that's right. And I'm not gonna fake anything, or anything like that, and I don't, I I'm part of the National Association of Forensics Engineers, which is a bunch of experts, and they talk about this stuff all the time, and that. So if you ever lose your kind of your credibility, you're done.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that,
It
that's
sounds like a lot of businesses through reputation and word of mouth.
like for our consulting company, and even on on the litigation stuff. I don't do marketing. My
Mm.
marketing is I answer the phone.
Right. Right. It's all reputation based. Finally, let's talk about billing. Do you typically use a job rate or an hourly rate? Do you use some combination? Do you take a retainer?
So I do an hourly rate, and we'll also have a non-refundable retainer.
Okay.
What I do try to do is, because I have a team of people, and if somebody says, "Hey, you need to go pull 200 patents and review those and look at them," you don't necessarily need me to do that. So I can have somebody on my staff to go do some of those things. So some of the research, or getting, doing a variety of things. You don't need to pay me to be, the technical editor of the report. I mean, I have an editor, and she's less expensive than I am. So I try to use, the teams of people, or if we're doing drawings as part of the report, or mapping, or I've got a GIS guy, so I try to use those things, so that, and I'll be upfront with the client and the attorney to be able to say, it's like, I can just do all this, but it's going to be more expensive. And so I've got specialists that can do this, that are at lesser rates than I am, and I would say, and just so far in my experience, that's worked very well for me.
Excellent. Do you have any last advice for either expert witnesses or attorneys before we sign off?
I just say, you know, take on the cases that interest you. Um, I've been very fortunate to do some just really neat cases that keep me going. I would hate to think of doing one that I just, that I didn't want to get up out of bed to do, because, when you're getting ready for a deposition or trying to get a report finalized or get ready to do trial prep, it is, I can tell you a lot of times at 2 o'clock in the morning where I'm sitting with attorneys doing trial prep, and so you better love it.
Yeah, that's sage advice. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining me here today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us for another discussion at the Roundtable. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Discussions at Roundtable. Our show notes are available on our website, roundtablegroup.com. Subscribe today on Apple Podcasts or your favorite listening apps.